So I was at that session and I was sitting beside Karen Neufeld, who we know, and she and I were in this row and there was an undergraduate student between us. And there was a lot of active learning in the session. So, hey, try this on. Here's a recommendation. Let's try this out. And we had this student between us and she was hilarious and she was completely honest, completely overwhelmed, and so grateful to have that session. So anyway, I really appreciate these regionals and what they do for undergraduates is so amazing.
Hi, Eric here, and I recently chatted with my podcast partner Garth about the 2022 return of in-person conferences, and we update our listeners on a couple of Psych Sessions news items. Welcome to episode 143 of Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff.
The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by Macmillan Learning. Macmillan Learning's Achieve for Psychology, setting a whole new standard for integrating assessments, activities, and analytics into your teaching. One way Achieve does this is by offering exclusive digital activities for each title, created by the author or authors. These immersive activities, each accompanied by assessments, engage students in the very essence of contemporary psychology as they role-play as researchers, work with data, and learn to be critical thinkers. Experience these for yourself and tell us what you think. See a preview and get involved at macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning. The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by STP. That's the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA's second division. Become a member of STP for only $25. Just head to teachpsych.org. There is so much you get for your membership. We would like to remind listeners that the views or product endorsements expressed on Psych Sessions do not represent the views, supports, or endorsements of STP. Listeners, we want to invite you to be among the first to know who and what's coming up on the Psych Sessions podcast. Join our opt-in email list, just like hundreds of psychology instructors have already done. We promise not to fill your inboxes. When we email you bi-weekly or monthly, it will be something that means something. From new series announcements to new opportunities, we invite you to join the mission to get free, high-quality professional development to all teachers of psychology. So sign up for our opt-in email list. Just go to bit.ly/psych sessions-email. That's all lowercase, bit.ly/psych sessions-email.
Well, hello, Dr. Landrum. Nice to see you.
You know, you confused me with this greeting, Professor Neufeld, but hello. Good to hear you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You know, it's unbelievable after so many episodes recorded that you and I have had a 24 hours of trying to get together in different cities on our various platforms. Something like a poor hotel internet connection can really challenge the whole thing.
This interweb, we become dependent on it, don't we?
Oh, it's unreal. What would happen to the world if the web just turned off?
You know what? We would be okay. We would write letters. We would make phone calls using hard lines. You know, we used to do this in higher ed in our lives. It was called the before times.
Yeah, we can't even imagine that anymore.
We would go to the library, look up psych abstracts, you know, before there was psych info.
Oh, I remember that. I was just on the cusp of it. So I absolutely remember going to the library and looking up grabbing physical copies of periodicals.
The excitement of paging through a journal and finding what you wanted.
Oh, those were the good old days. Well, hey, thanks for chatting. And we're going to release this one. It's almost real time. I mean, we're going to release this in just a couple days and
Be fresh.
It's going to be fresh. And I'll just share with folks that I am currently in Chicago for MPA, and it's my first time being here.
MPA, if you're not familiar, is the Midwestern Psychological Association.
Yeah, and this is your old stomping grounds, I think, right? Eric Landrum.
It is. I attended my first MPA in 1985 as a Monmouth College undergraduate, taking the train from, I believe, Galesburg into Union Station in Chicago and taking a taxi to the Palmer House. And it was amazing. I was 22 years old going to my first conference. I had a poster and a poster too. My parents made sure I had a new suit. It was a big deal. I didn't have a faculty member with me that year, but went anyway. And, it just reminds me of how important these conferences can be to the professionalization of our students, to graduate students, to postdocs, to new faculty members alike.
Yeah. I want to talk about this conference. I mean, the regionals in general, because I've been visiting them over the last couple of years, but this one is pretty special. So a couple things. First of all, you mentioned the Palmer House, which has quite a cool history. And if folks have never been here, it might be worth the experience and the money to stay here once, because it's pretty neat. Hey, I got a question for you though. It's a hotel, it seems to me, that kind of prides itself on the past. It was, I think, one of the places that entertainers from New York and other places came to in the, maybe the 50s and 60s. And those photographs are on every wall in the entire hotel. There's Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. and so many others that are there. Now, this is not a question to make you feel old, but I do have a question for you. When you came, what were those things? Was the hotel decorated in the same way? And what did it mean to you to be in a place where all of those people had performed and it was kind of buzzing with entertainment? Was it a cool place that you knew about?
Well, Garth, I let me be honest with you. So first off, I probably at 22 years old didn't pay much attention to, the photos, the frame pictures in the hallway. I was probably just in awe. You come in the street level, you take an escalator to the main entryway, along the sides of that entryway, are where you do the registration, and there's a restaurant on the other side. But there's this multi-story great room with, paintings on the ceiling that, I've never been to the Sistine Chapel, but it makes me feel like what it might look like. And so I know the hotel's been remodeled a couple times what would that be, 40 some years since, my first conference in 1985, it's, 30 some years.
Yeah.
But, if you watch enough movies, there are movies that have been, portions of them have been shot, at the Palmer House, at the Drake, whether, there's some classic downtown Chicago movies where someone can recognize pieces and parts of Hilton hotels. So it was, exciting for my psychological professional future, but also, I grew up north of Chicago. So I had gone to graduate school in Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Here I was going back to Chicago to present downtown. It was a big deal on a number of levels for me as an undergraduate, and then as a graduate student.
Yeah, I am watching these undergraduate students. I walk around this hotel. I'm walking through these poster sessions. So many students, I think more than any other regional I've seen potentially. So I'm not sure if that's correct, but it's what it feels like to me. So what does it mean as someone who kind of didn't come out of that undergraduate, research background. I didn't have that sort of experience. What is it like for a student to come? And you've brought students to regionals too. So what's
absolutely.
it like? Right. So what is it like for these students to come? What do they get out of this? What is I'm sure there's professional benefit that you have insight to.
Well, I think the key word is professionalization. We teach our students on our campuses. We can have them get up and give a 2-minute talk on their research methods and describe their independent and dependent variable. We can have Psych-Hi meetings where we invite speakers and there's a Q&A and maybe a handful of students go out to dinner. And those are all great things that we can do. We have a Psi Beta speaker to our campus and, have them do a research talk or a symposium. And we should keep doing those things. But there's no experience like a student conducting her or his own research, writing it up, submitting it, seeing if it gets accepted or not, because there could be a rejection rate. And then once getting accepted, traveling to a hotel in a city different from their own home campus, having that nervousness of they're going to be asked questions about their research, going to a poster session or a paper, and being a psychological scientist and talking about their research and being asked questions in a friendly but professional format and being dressed up and being around other people who are dressed up. And, that professionalization, we all get a little bit of it on our campus, but it's a little bit more informal. And this gives them a slice of what it's like to be a professional. They may not go on to graduate school. They may not get their master's or doctorate, but they may go on to be, do something else outside of psychology, or they may go into the psychology workforce for sure. And they can talk about that conference experience. I like to actually think that being a research assistant and going to a conference and having that on your CV or your resume is more important for students who don't go to graduate school than those who do go to graduate school.
Yeah, it's neat to see them. I was in some sessions with student panels, and to hear them talk about what this means to them personally is neat. I was at Rocky Mountain Psychological Association a few weeks ago, and two of our favorite people, Aaron Richmond and Bethany Fleck Dillon, gave the most wonderful talk on behalf of Psych-Hi, I think. And I think they may do this talk regularly at RMPA, but it was essentially for students. And I think it was 10 things that you need to be thinking about to be a psychological scientist. Or I think that, as I was listening to it, it was, here is how you be professional. And they were hilarious. Obviously, they talked about how you dress. One of the points was about people are watching you. No matter where you go while you're here, you are representing psychology. And whether you're dressed up or not, whether you're giving your poster or not, there are faculty and your peers and people are watching you. So be professional. And I just thought it was a wonderful talk. In fact, I haven't seen anything like that at the other regionals, and I thought they should take it on tour because it was so good.
Yeah, they do that every year at RMPA. It's okay. Kind of framed as how to get the most out of the conference experience.
Ah, I see.
And right. I've actually sat in and listened to them give it, and you're exactly right. It is wonderful. It is sometimes tongue-in-cheek. Actually, someone that you met this year, Vinny Prohaska, does that out at EPA.
Oh.
He gives a very similar how to get the most out of this convention for students, especially students who are at their first convention.
It's interesting. Now that I think about that experience, at RMPA, that particular session, it was full. There were so many students at it. I guess that resonates, and that's probably why they're there.
Well, and it's what's really cool about that is that, if a student is going to pay the money, pay the registration, spend 2 or 3 nights in a pretty pricey hotel, they tend to show up for those events. And so those Psych-Hi events, how to get into graduate school, how to, get a great job in the psychology workforce, those are oftentimes really well attended. Every time at RMPA or WPA or MPA, and I've given these talks many times, graduate school tips, the room's always packed. And when I leave, people follow me out in the hallway, or no matter who's giving it, it's not about me. Whoever's giving that flavor of talk every year over a year, because people are curious about that, and they have questions that aren't necessarily fitting the custom, the generic answer. And so they really leverage their time there. And I'm always happy to see that.
So I was at that session, and I was sitting beside Karen Neufeld, who we know. She had come to RMPA to give a keynote address, and she and I were in this row, and there was an undergraduate student between us, and there was a lot of active learning in the session. So, hey, try this on. Here's a recommendation. Let's try this out. And we had this student between us, and she was hilarious, and she was completely honest, completely overwhelmed, and so grateful to have that session. So anyway, I really appreciate these regionals, and what they do for undergraduates is so amazing. And I got to say, at the community college level, and I can only speak from my experience, I think there's some groups that do this pretty well, or some organizations that maybe do this pretty well with Psi Beta programs, things. But at my college, we have the students, it's a commuter college, and we have the students for such a short period of time, and we really don't get to know them very well. And so this experience of undergraduates coming to a conference with their professors, working together, it's something that I really admire. I think it would be a really neat experience to have. And I've been thinking even about what would fundraising on my campus look like to take my students from my research methods course who are going to be psych majors to something like this, just to experience it before they transfer. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I have to be a little bit creative from the community college perspective.
Yeah, and I think with a little bit of work you could do it. It's almost like you need an endowment, which you would peel off an interest rate that would help, because if you stayed with, for you, Garth, Cascadia College, and technically it's Bothell, right?
Yep.
So you probably go to WPA or RMPA, depending on its location. You go to the closest, maybe you can do that for $200 a student if you have a bunch of students in a room together and you're very efficient, but with some fundraising and, some kicking in some donations, maybe from local groups. I mean, over a couple of years, you might be able to do that. I mean, and some students might be able to pay their way. There could be a sliding scale. I think there are ways to do it. And I think, again, I think it's just as important. It could be just as impactful for community college students as it is for those 4-year students.
Yeah. And there's lots of ways to engage for those students. One of the things I learned is that not all students who come here are presenting posters necessarily. Right. And so they can have that experience without that high level contribution.
Yeah. In fact, if we idealized it, really the first visit might be just going to a conference and seeing what it's about and going to talks, knowing what a poster is, going to some keynotes, seeing some famous people, and then coming back the second year and presenting, if undergraduates have that luxury.
Yeah. Did you know that these kinds of conferences, like growing up in your house, did you realize in high school or earlier that professional conferences like this existed?
No. In high school, heavens no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even outside of psychology, I guess maybe my dad went to a professional conference at one point in my childhood. I didn't have any idea about what that meant, but I'm wondering how many of my students really understand, because if you're in business, I've got a buddy who he's an entrepreneur and he makes pumps for pools, and he goes to these conferences for his industry. And, this is a skill. And you talk about skills a lot, how to participate in these kinds of organizations and communities, because that networking and connection and observing, that can really pay off.
Well, first off, you're exactly right. It's a total skill, and it takes the ability to flip the extroversion switch. You don't have to be an extrovert, but you have to be able to flip that switch. And this is really hard for a lot of introverts. Extroverts tend to love going to conferences because they get their juices running, they get energized. People like you, people like Regan Guru, oh my gosh, they go to a conference and they find their people. I go to a conference, and whether you believe it or not, I am a painful introvert. And so I go to a conference, and at the end of the day, I'm exhausted. By the end of the conference, I am wiped out. There might be a dinner at the end of the conference. I'm almost always going to pass because I have just, and I'm going to say this as nice as I can, I've had enough of people, even people that I love and adore. I just got to have some alone time. And but if I go to a conference and never talk to anybody, that's a wasted opportunity. So you have to be able to flip that switch in order to maximize the opportunity.
Well, listeners can't see that I'm smiling right now because when we were at RMPA a couple of weeks ago, I said to you, hey, Eric, because I know you like small groups of people. You don't like the big table where you can't really connect with anybody, right? And I said, hey, Eric, I'm going to do dinner with just 2 people, real small group. Are you interested in joining us? And you said, no, thank you. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I knew you were done because, it is, I think when you are on, especially if you're giving talks and answering questions and networking, that is exhausting for those of us who are introverted.
Yeah. And fortunately, a good strategy was you and I had dinner on night 1. So I wasn't wiped out, people wise, and still a lot of high energy. And even if it's a small group, I'm getting to be an old cranky man. And what I mean by that is that even if it's a small group of 4 people, that might be delightful. But if we're in a loud, noisy restaurant, it takes so much effort and leaning in and having to yell and shout to hear one another. Man, I'd rather be in a quiet hotel lobby than trying to eat a foo-foo dinner restaurant, gourmet crap thing,
Oh, I know too well. So, hey, before we move on from regionals, let's just, for those folks who don't know, there are 7 regionals. There are many more conferences than just the regionals, but there are 7 regionals in the United States. And 6 of them run in spring, 1 of them on the East Coast, which is NEPA, NECTOP, Northeast Psychological Association, and Northeast NECTOP, Northeast Conference on Teaching on Psychology. Anyway, that one's in fall, but the other ones, Midwest, Western, Rocky Mountain, Southeastern, Southwestern, they all take place in April. They are wonderful conferences to go to. Some are big, some are small. Some have, different kinds of programming for teachers, and that's kind of our area. Some do pre-conferences, and some have that teaching programming kind of just threaded through the entire conference. And it's a cool experience that I've had to be able to go to a number of them. I know you've been to a number of them too. Does anything else stick out to you about these regional conferences other than what we've talked about that we should share with folks who haven't been to them?
Well, I think one of the benefits of the regionals is that they can be less expensive for faculty and students to travel to compared to an APA or an APS or an NITOP because they literally are regional. So hopefully the travel is a little bit less expensive, depending on the hotel and where you are in the region. So that's one of the benefits. But the other benefit really, or among many others, I suppose, is that the regionals are more general. So, if you want to study and take a deep dive on alcohol research, you would probably go to RSA, the Research Society on Alcoholism. If you're a developmentalist, you might go to SRCD, the Society for Research on Child Development. But if you want to understand a wide swath of psychological science, the regionals, as well as an APA, APS, NITOP, those would be, the regionals are a great place to do that. Plus, the regionals tend to be very student friendly. Now, when you get to an APA and APS, they will take students, but they're not as student friendly. And I guess another way to say that, they're not as student reliant. As Garth, as you have realized, MPA is a real student reliant conference. So is our MPA. If students stopped going to those two conferences I just mentioned, I'm not so sure they would be sustainable.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So even though these aren't terribly expensive conferences, the registration fees make a difference.
The registration fees make a difference, and also the vendors that they have. So I'm sure you've walked around the upper exhibit hall at MPA, and you've walked around the perimeter of the posters, and that's very strategic. You got 80 posters going on in a poster session. So you've got people coming to that poster session. You got to walk through where the exhibitors are. And so the exhibitors pay for that space. And so MPA and all the conferences are supposed to do this, want to make it so that those exhibitors get foot traffic. And so that is placed there very strategically.
Yeah, and MPA has a lot of sponsors, and a lot of those are graduate schools, Eric. And you probably are aware of this, but I'm used to more, because my area is teaching conferences. So when I go to teaching conferences, it's textbook publishers, it's teaching tech. Here, you get that stuff, but you also get, I saw some West Coast schools over here advertising their graduate schools, a California School of Professional Psychology. I saw Azusa Pacific University. I saw, a bunch of different ones.
Well, and if you think about it, it makes really good sense. You've got really bright students who got their act together during COVID, collected data, submitted it, got it accepted to MPA, made it to a conference. Many of them, if not most of them, are interested in graduate school, even if they're taking a gap year. So why not have a table or a booth advertising your graduate program where likely graduate students are bound to be? And if you can't get their attention by sending them emails and flyers, why not be in front of them while they're walking through the Palmer House?
Yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thanks for indulging me a little bit about these regionals. As you know, I hold this current position through the Society for the Teaching of Psychology right now. It's the director of regional conference programming. And so I have the privilege of working with our seven regional coordinators at each of the regional conferences on strengthening teaching programming. And it's such a privilege to go out to these places and work with these people and see what has long existed before I was any kind of part of it. And the great program that's going on it's really impressive. And I even get to see my favorite people. I got to see and hang out with Mary Kite today. So that was fun. Yeah.
So Garth, you've been to all the regionals now. Which one has the best teaching programming?
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot and I'm not going to answer it.
That's a very savvy answer.
Yeah. Here's what I know. There are different politics. There are different histories. There are different strengths and weaknesses to all these conferences. And you might think that the teaching programming is somehow aligned or something like that. It's just not. It's one of the things that we're trying to do is get folks to kind of work together on. I don't think that there are official best practices in teaching programming, but sharing resources, those 7 coordinators, and what's working and what can we try. And then mostly, I think one of the most important things is getting a seat at the executive team level on those conference boards so that we even more impact.
Yeah, I think, the history, even at MPA, is really interesting because the strength in teaching programming hasn't always been from STP. It was from a prior organization called CTUP, the Council of Teachers of Undergraduate Psychology that predates really STP in the Midwestern region. STP wasn't a player in the late 80s, early 90s at all. They were a minor concern. And this goes back to, the days of Jane Hallinan and Blaine Peden and Drew Appleby planning MPA teaching sessions. And Mary Kite was part of that. I was on the fringes of that. And so when you say politics, that really does matter. And it wasn't competition per se, but it was just who stepped up and did it. And CTUP was its own organization. It had regional officers. It had a national president. CTUP was its own thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it makes me just think about how teaching psychology is or isn't valued in these places. Well, and I think it's valued by teachers, but I guess I'm trying to step lightly here, but you maybe can speak to this even more than I can about where teaching is seen in our, area, our discipline.
Oh, I'm not quite sure what you're saying, but I think if you asked our general brethren and sistren in the discipline, I think the general perception is teaching is this thing that psychology faculty have to do. They love doing their research, and we have to teach. And some people enjoy doing a good job teaching, but teaching oftentimes is perceived as getting in the way. Now, some people get the bug and enjoy teaching, and they realize that teaching becomes the scholarship of teaching and learning. And just like some people take a deep dive into developmental or cognitive or social, some people take a deep dive into pedagogy, but not everyone, clearly. And so, yeah, I think I'll just give you my best example of this. In our discipline, when someone gets a grant, the reward for the grant is buying out of teaching. So
Yep.
when someone is rewarded for great teaching, when do they get to buy out of research or buy out of service for amazing teaching? So I think there's and that's okay. That's the inherent bias in our discipline, that we value the advancement of knowledge and not necessarily the teaching of that knowledge to others. If that's the bias, that's the bias. But, no one ever was able to advance knowledge without a knowledge base. They had great teachers somewhere.
Yeah, I gave a talk here today at MPA, and one of the questions I asked people and gave them time to reflect on was I wanted them to think about a teacher who impacted them and to really think about what it was about that person that impacted them. And you and I know we've interviewed now at this point, or through psych sessions, hundreds of different folks. And this has come up over and over again, that it is usually a teacher or mentor that we can look back on and say that changed everything for me from an academic or educational perspective. And what I see at these regionals is I see the teachers who care, because they're so undergraduate focused and even reliant. They draw people who really care about students. And I think it's pretty special. There is a warmth there to it. So we can move on. I just wanted to, this is something that is new to me, even as I don't know what the last time that a community college professor was in this position for STP, but it's been eye-opening to me, and I'm really thankful for it.
I just want to ask you one quick question. When you gave your talk today at MPA, did your technology work?
My technology worked because I went in there early and I planned for it. I tested it.
And you had the right dongles for your Apple Mac machine?
I had the right dongles, Eric. Yeah, I worked with the folks and made sure I brought the right inserts, and it was all good.
Okay, glad to hear it.
Yeah, thanks. So hey, we also, other than kind of conference season is back on, we wanted to talk about a little bit about what it's like to be back in person. Could I just ask you, like, what has it been like to get on a plane again or to drive to a conference? I think maybe you've been on a plane. Yeah, a couple planes already.
I've been on a couple planes, and I'm going to get on a plane. This is almost real time. When this episode drops, that's what we say in the business, when it drops on Tuesday, April 26th, 2022, I'll be on my way to the Western Psychological Association in Portland. And it's been different, buddy. I got to tell you that, I went on one trip in 2021 to see my sister in St. Louis, and that was it. That was really the only time I traveled by plane. And I've been on 3 plane trips this year. This one will be my 4th coming up next week. And, when you're in the airport, you're still wearing a mask. I think the mask rules have changed. So that's going to be different. Being in a hotel around hundreds of people at a conference, being in a hotel ballroom, listening to a keynote speaker and seeing all these floods of people, it's a little bit of an adaptation for me. I've got to tell you. How has your reaction been to all this?
I don't think I was irresponsible during the pandemic, but I wore mask and I got vaccinated and boosted and all those kinds of things. But who knows what's actually going on in my brain when when I'm about to answer this, because I think I'm so extroverted that I'm just willing to sacrifice a lot just to be with people and see people. And so I think that makes me just okay with all the risk. Whatever risk is going on, and we can never know how much risk exactly. And we know it's better now than it was a year ago, for example. But man, I am loving this. I was able to take my family with me on a recent trip to New York City, and we had a wonderful time while I was at EPA, and I just couldn't be happier. So I lived when the pandemic was at its worst, and we were not traveling at all for over a year. I was having fun, just, socially distancing and connecting with people. But as long as I'm connecting with people, I am in a happy place.
Yeah, I think for introverts, and I'm sure I'm overgeneralizing here, but, the running gag is social distancing. We've been practicing for this our whole lives, right? And it's an overgeneralization, but, I guess maybe I didn't ease back into it. I've been to EPA, I've been to RMPA, I'm about to go to WPA. So 3 conferences in March and April is not easing back into it. And so, plus, you said something about taking the risk, and I think we now better understand the risk. If someone is, had the vaccine and had the boosts, if you were to get COVID, we pretty much know that that is not a death sentence. It just means that you're going to get sick, maybe not, but then you're going to be okay. That's what the data are telling us.
Yeah. So the travel's been nice. It's felt kind of normal. I'm looking forward to APA I won't be going, but for those who are going to be going to that annual conference, because I know that convention, people do that. I will be attending ACT in October. I'm looking forward to seeing folks in Pittsburgh. I think we are going to Pittsburgh, and I'm just hoping that these things happen. I started Tip Northwest, a conference 8 years ago, and then 2 years ago when the pandemic hit, we were all ready to go with our most successful year ever was, a month away, and we had to pull the plug on it. And I understand the pain of doing something like that. And I just hope that these conferences don't have to do that. Man, it costs a lot of money. We don't sit on, thousands of dollars of just, rainy day funds or something like that. And so it really does hurt when these things have to be canceled.
Well, and I think, we're going to have to figure out this new normal. I mean, why would, there's going to be new outbreaks. There's going to be new strains. And so would a strain be so virulent that we couldn't gather together? Or could we just mask up and make sure everyone has a boost? So it would have to, I suppose something could be so nasty that we couldn't get together, but I think we're just going to have to wait to figure it out. Or a conference goes to part in person, part hybrid, and, you don't get a refund, but you get to choose your modality. And conferences have to plan for that and build it into the initial cost.
Yeah, I think that's how these organizations are changing and are going to have to change. For Tip Northwest, we decided not to offer that hybrid option, but we did create a totally online conference for those folks called Intro Psych Coast to Coast, which is in January. But I know that other places or organizations like the Annual Conference on Teaching, STP's conference, and maybe APA, I suspect APA, that they're going to have a virtual portion. NITOP did as well this year. So that's just, you're right. That's the way it's going to go.
Yeah. And that might mean that you pay a little extra, but that also means nothing gets canceled. And I guess this is going to be a little bit self-serving. And so I apologize to our listeners in advance, but I think this is one of the places that psych sessions can really serve a purpose. So when these conferences have their keynote speakers, here's a plug for why not let folks from psych sessions come and record that keynote. And if you want to put an embargo on it, make it be a 3-month or 6-month embargo. And then why not share that expertise from your conference through the psych sessions network 3, 6, 9 months later? I understand that you might not want it live streamed because you don't want to cut down on the number of people attending. You don't have the Rolling Stones perform and then broadcast it for free on the same day, but you release the live album a little bit later where people can buy it. Well, it's not quite the exact same analogy, but why not let us record the Claude Steele keynote and then 3 months later release it on psych sessions?
Yeah, I've got a better metaphor. It's when sports teams black out the local showing of an event, right? Because they want to fill the arena with locals. So that does work. Concerts, sporting events, but also it's a great idea. It really is. And I think that in my marketing mind, I would release those right as you are opening registration up for your conference for the next year, because it would create some buzz and people would
look at that. Yeah. But think about it. We've got, conferences all over the country, all over the world are having these amazing, top-notch, world-class speakers give these keynotes, and they end up being lost in the ephemera because they're not recorded. One of the benefits of TED Talks is that we think they're going to be there forever. And so with the permission of the speaker, with the permission of the conference, why not let psych sessions mic somebody up or hook up to the soundboard already in the back of the room and let us record it and release it on your time frame and share that gooey goodness with the world.
It's such a great idea, Eric. I think we should pursue it. I know, as someone who has given a couple invited talks now, and you have given many, I know the time that goes into those, and when you're giving a talk like that, you put so much time and effort into it, and you say things in a particular way. It's so thoughtful. It's probably the most thoughtful talk you've given, maybe, in the recent history. And the fact that it's one and done, and there might only be 25 people in the room who ever hear it, that's hard. That's really hard for folks. And how cool using that TED Talk model to bring that to the general public. And think about the folks who can't afford to go to these conferences, who don't have funding from their institution, or maybe they're high school teachers, and we can get that out to them.
Well, and if we got creative about this, and I know we're kind of spitballing publicly, but why not, right? What about the teachers among us who need continuing education credits? And again, just like you just said, what if they can't leave their school district to go to their all-day workshops? What if the all-day workshops and the speakers came to them through these curated talks on a psych sessions, special channel or its own network or our own version of our TED Talks. And what if, for that matter, we don't have to wait till they give an invited address at a conference. What if we invited people? The model of NOBA is that they invited people to write chapters in their area of expertise. What would stop us from inviting people around the country to record a talk about their area of expertise, and with their permission, release it and have a series of curated talks that were given to psych sessions for the free distribution through our network?
Well, if anybody has made it this far, and this would be the time for us to say that and I don't even know that we have any official announcements, but I do feel like something has shifted here, Eric, for us recently, and that these kinds of ideas are now a little bit of like they're within our reach, right? Because for the first 5 years of Psych Sessions, we've never taken a salary from this. This is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We've had some grants from like STP early on, and we've had some other support that helped us along with buying equipment and doing some really like remarkable early interviews that got us some listenership. But we're kind of coming into a season. We've always had to be really careful because we never knew next year what was going to be available. And now we're coming into a season where we're actually going to have a few years of very generous funding from a sponsor. And I think that's going to allow us to do some of these things.
So just to clarify one thing, so as Garth said, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And Garth was also exactly right that he and I have never taken a personal salary, but those two things are not related. So there could be a time in the future that we do take a salary, but we don't. And nonprofits do pay salaries. So I just want to clarify that for our listeners. So
that's true. Actually, there's a great TED Talk that I watched recently, and people are going to know his name, and I can't remember his name right now because it's really well viewed out there. But essentially, wondering why we don't pay people in nonprofit who are doing very good work, and we don't pay them equivalent to private sector. Now, that's really talking more about business and large scale kind of nonprofits who are doing real good in the world. But I think that Psych Sessions does some good in our little area. So I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah. And I think the main reason is that, Psych Sessions for us is really a side hustle, a side gig, and we have full-time jobs. And if either one of us did not have a full-time job, we might talk about how that changes. But anyway, so our new sponsor, are we ready to announce this? Or have you kind of said it specifically, or have you hinted at it?
No, we haven't said anything, but I'll tell you what, I mean, it's on, it's 99%, but I have not seen the, oh, wait, no, we saw the signatures, didn't we?
I got signatures, and I actually have it in front of me so I can say the disclaimer.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Because I don't want to break any rules. And so we are thrilled to tell you that the Society for the Teaching of Psychology, STP, is going to be our sponsor for 2023, 2024, and 2025. And we are thankful for all the leadership that helped this happen. We are thrilled to be continuing to partner with them. There's lots of exciting things that are going to come along, and that's awesome. And I'm going to have more fun with this than I should, but I get to say this to you. The views or product endorsements expressed do not represent the views, support, or endorsements of STP.
Yeah, and we need to say that as quickly as possible, like they do on those medical commercials right at the end.
Yeah, I guess I could record it and then play it 2x or something like that.
Yeah,
you need to say it a way where the people don't actually understand it.
Yes, yeah. Well, you and I know this is a very good move for another 501c3 nonprofit organization to say, hey, we want to support you, but we are not you. And so we want to keep our distance just in case.
Just in case Eric screws up.
Yeah, just in case Eric screws up. But think about this too. We bring on, I don't know how many people we've talked to, hundreds through the Psych Sessions family of, different series that we provide here. And, there's a lot of different people with different kinds of opinions. And I do think those kinds of things have to be said because their values may not always line up with STPs. And so fair enough.
Yeah, obviously, you and I both were members of STP before we even formed Psych Sessions. And STP is our home organization that we love and adore. And not only are we proud to be sponsored by them, but we want to protect them as much as we want to advance Psych Sessions. So we're just thrilled to be a part of it. And we're very happy to give them their disclaimer anytime they want. I think I want to hire someone like a professional recording artist to say it, or we could get someone to say it in different voices. Like, I want to hear a Morgan Freeman voice of this.
Oh, we should get a celebrity to do it. A celebrity impersonator.
Oh,
yeah. Maybe there's a celebrity among us who we can get to do it, like a celebrity in the psychology world. Is there anything else we want to talk about, Eric, before we wrap up today?
Hey, can we do the Corbett Ava transition?
Well, sure. Let me pick up here from earlier. Well, Eric, you know who has a great voice for radio? I won't say great face for radio. I just said it. But you know who has a great voice for radio?
Who has a great voice for radio?
My good friend, Corbett Stubbert, who you have met recently. We've had some interaction. He actually has this deep voice. We'll have to get him on here at some point and maybe have him read that disclaimer for us. But yeah, do you want to tell people about what this is actually related to our relationship sponsorship with STP? Corbett Stubbert has become part of the Psych Sessions family.
Yeah. So, we got some grant funding a while back from a very generous benefactor who Garth and I figured out we need some help, kind of a front office help. And we pursued it, and we thought about interns. We thought about people who work around us, people we trust. And the first selection we made was someone who works with me, Ava Canneberger, who's our business operations supervisor at Boise State. We actually released a sidebar about her probably in December or January. And then Ava just got too busy with her regular job. And she said, this is so important that I don't have time to do it well. I need to back away. And so we adore her. We still might ask her to help us out with some special projects from time to time. But since she's had to step away, we still need the support. And so Garth kind of tapped into one of his good friends, and Corbett is amazing, and he is going to do a fantastic job. We might not call him our new wizard of operations, but we'll come up with a suitable title for him.
Yeah, I am looking forward to that. It's already been very productive. The website is now closer than ever to being launched, and we have some other things, fun things coming, I hope, in this calendar year. And Corbett will be instrumental in helping us do those things because this is a labor of love. We love Psych Sessions, but
yeah, so it's nice to be able to have a staff member that we can pay a part-time wage to help us out. And again, through the sponsorship of STP, where the views or product endorsements expressed do not express the views, support, or endorsements of STP. By having that support, we're able to tell Corbett, hey, we know that for at least the next 3 years, you want to keep helping us out. We're going to be able to keep paying you.
Yeah, cool. It is a really neat spot to be in. Congratulations to us, Eric. I wanted to congratulate you, but then I realized I'm congratulating myself too.
Congratulations, Garth. Congratulations.
What I'm trying to say is that this is really exciting. It's cool to think about the new programming that we've been releasing, what's coming next. I know that you have plans. You've sent microphones out to folks, and we are going to grow this thing and offer more professional development and entertainment to our colleagues nationally, internationally.
Yep. We talked to folks at RMPA about kind of rebranding and relaunching our mentor series. And I'm about to send the whole microphone recording kit to a faculty member. And so we've got that in the books. We've been talking about an abnormal psych session series. where we've got some folks we're thinking about for that. And so we've got an intro psych sessions in the works. We've sent the kit there. Careers psych sessions. So we've got all kinds of new series, new network programming in the works, and we're just going to keep expanding and growing with the talented family that we have access to.
Yep. And of course, Ask Psych Sessions with Marianne Lloyd continues beyond teaching. Teaching matters. And then we have some archived series that are also available and hopefully soon on the web.
Don't forget about At Work. Don't forget about TLC.
Of course. It's hard to keep track of them all.
It's almost like we need a website.
It's almost like it's time for a website. You're right. Oh, if only. Well, Eric, I will see you. I look forward to seeing you at another regional here shortly at WPA. And I just want to thank our listeners. If you did make it this far, we obviously couldn't do this without you. So thanks for listening.